My journey to becoming the Pope of Pizza in Dallas is a long and convoluted one, over 20 years in the making. It all started the summer I decided to stay at Georgetown University after my sophomore year, to take some of my more difficult required classes. I had visions of securing an internship on Capitol Hill, but like most kids, I ended up working in the on-campus student-run bar instead. It was located in the basement of the admin building. It had no natural sunlight, but it had top-of-the-line air conditioning, a creature comfort our summer rental house was sadly lacking. It was here that I would get my first shot at cooking pizza for the drunk and hungry masses. Now, these were frozen pizza shells and canned sauce cooked in a countertop toaster, but I had to start somewhere. Upon graduating with my generic degree in mid-level GPA, I figured I had two career paths: lawyer or waiter. So imagine my surprise when I was offered an actual paying job with GE Capital, where I found myself responsible for managing hundreds of people at Midwestern call centers. While stuffing myself into a suit and rotating through various beige cubicles at GE business units, I was somehow recognized with their Pinnacle Award, which luckily for me included a 10-day, all-expenses-paid, lavish cruise to the French and Italian Riviera. One of the stops on the cruise was the seaside town of Sorrento, just south of Naples. One night in the square at Pizzeria Aurora, I had my first taste of truly authentic Neapolitan pizza. At the time, I was living in New York, and most of my New York friends had told me, "Oh, you'll hate the pizza over there. It doesn't taste anything like the pizza here in New York." And the whole time, all I could think of was, holy shit, this sauce tastes like tomatoes, and holy shit, this cheese tastes like milk. It was the freshest food I had ever tasted, never mind just the best pizza. To this day, I can remember how bright the tomato sauce was and how impossibly creamy that mozzarella was. But the honeymoon was soon over, and it was back to the fascinating, exciting world of credit card receivables and interest rate spreads. My career took many twists and turns as I moved through jobs and companies around the country. Wherever I lived or traveled, I always made it a point to try to seek out the best pizza in the area just to see if it matched up to the benchmark I had in Italy. Flash forward 10 years. I was now working for a Dallas-based company. My wife and I had moved to a little town called Lucas where all the homes were on an acre or more. Given that we had so much space, I built a wood-burning pizza oven in our backyard as a surprise for my wife. Despite the fact that it took 6 weeks to build, she never noticed that it was actually going up in our backyard. When it was done, of course, she said, "You'll never use that." But I guess we know who's having the last laugh now. So I had the oven. I was ready to start knocking out authentic Neapolitan pizzas. I mean, how hard could it be? Well, as it turns out, it's really fucking hard. Neapolitan pizza is a tremendous pain in the ass to make. My pizzas were terrible. They weren't round, they were ripped, they were sloppy, and most of them were nuclear. I began looking for help on the interwebs and found a glimmer of hope in a group called l'Associazione Verace Pizza Napolitana, which is basically pizzaiolo from Naples that lived in Los Angeles and trained U.S. restaurant owners how to make authentic Neapolitan pizzas according to Neapolitan tradition. So I arranged a bogus business trip, packed up the family, and headed out to take a 5-day intensive pizza-making class. Again, as I approach everything, how hard could it be? Well, what I thought would be a classroom-based instruction turned out to be a very busy working restaurant. And the training was truly hands-on, as in within 5 minutes of walking into the restaurant, they had a hat and an apron on me and were preparing me to work the lunch shift. The instructor said, "Show me how you make pizza," to which I replied, "I do not know how to make pizza. I don't have a restaurant." Needless to say, it was a very, very long first day. But I did eventually get the hang of it, making hundreds of pizzas each day, making fresh mozzarella from scratch, stretching Neapolitan dough, and learning to manage a 900-degree wood-burning oven that cooks pizzas in 75 seconds. When I got back to Texas, my pizzas were amazing. I was on my game. I had cracked the code. After a week of Donato and Pepe yelling at me, "Jay, pizzas are round," I finally had it figured out. Meanwhile, my real job continued to chug along. Selling outsourced IT services to regulated utilities was quite interesting, of course, but it did pay well. But as anyone who's ever worked in a large company knows, it's a never-ending cycle of new bosses who have everything figured out. I think at one point I had 8 bosses in a 2-year period. It was always in the back of my mind that there had to be something more than this. I had the inspiration from Italy, I had the oven in the backyard, and was now a certified pizzaiolo. I just needed one more little push. And that push came on a booze and steak-fueled Indian princess campout. As we sat around the campfire very late one night, and it is, of course, all about the kids. As we sat around a campfire very late one night, two friends who would eventually become my partners in Cane Rosso encouraged me to throw off the shackles of my beige cubicle and focus on pizza full time. So we'll never know if it was the beer, the scotch, gentle prodding, or the meat coma, but that night I decided to go and purchase a wood-fired oven mounted on a trailer and try to build a private catering company as a starting point. I mean, I had the passion and the skills, but let's not get nuts. Baby steps. I still had a mortgage, a wife, kids, and a couple of dogs. So my first time making pizzas for the public was in the fall of 2008, a Halloween festival for my kids' school. Myself and one other person made about 90 pizzas in a 3-hour period for lower school kids up to 4th grade. And these were some of the worst pizzas I had ever seen in my life. But the feedback was amazing. People loved the pizza, and we were on our way. Unfortunately, we were also still novices, as I forgot to disconnect the chimney from the mobile unit, and I saw it in my rearview mirror on eastbound George Bush. The trailer then sat idle in my driveway all through the winter of 2008 until I cold called the guys at Time 10 Cellars to see if they would be interested in doing a pizza night. And this is before food trucks really had a hold in Dallas. They said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't you bring about 30 pizzas on a Wednesday night? I said, okay, we'll try that. So I brought about 60, and we sold out in just about an hour. We thought we might be onto something. We started to build a regular base of customers, and our Wednesday pizza nights remain one of the most popular nights at Times 10 even to this day. From here, we started to book private catering events for weddings, birthdays, and law firm summer intern parties. I started to get the confidence that I could do this on a full-time basis. Then at Times 10, we met a local landlord that had become a regular customer of ours and loved our pizza. Luckily for me, he took pity on us, schlepping a 900-degree wood-burning oven through the Texas summers, and told me he had a building we just had to see. When I walked into the space at Commerce Street in Deep Ellum, everything fell into place. While the place was a dump, literally, it used to be a bar called the Daiquiri Dump. And I'm not making that up. It had the bones of exactly what I was looking for. Keep in mind that up until this point, I still had my full-time day job, so I was just doing catering on nights and weekends. The economy had been in the tank, was showing signs of a weak recovery, and my company happened to be offering severance packages. I closed my eyes, swallowed hard, and volunteered to be taken out back and shot. Of course, I waited a few days to tell my wife, who's probably hearing this for the first time tonight. Love you, babe. I wanted to get through Halloween without stressing the family out. This was already scary enough. This was it. I was about to start a new career as a restaurateur at age 40. Midlife crisis activated. In October 2010, we signed a very tenant-friendly lease and threw open the doors to our first restaurant on Valentine's Day 2011. This is a young man's game. The 3 years we've been working feels like 20. When we first opened, I did almost everything myself. I was at the restaurant every day at 8 a.m. and mostly didn't leave until 2 a.m. After one late night shift and about 1,000 iced teas, I actually got pulled over and was given a field sobriety test because the officer observed me fading in and out of lanes. I was exhausted, not drunk. After passing the test, he asked me if I was awake enough to drive home. I was scared shitless. I had no problem. I was working longer and harder than I ever had before, but we were building something different. Despite having no restaurant experience, things really began to take off. What made it work was a combination of how hard can it be attitude, along with 21 years of polo shirts, dockers, and beige cubicles, where I learned how to run a business like a business. What gets measured gets managed. It's amazing to me to think about how something simple as a slice of pizza has dramatically changed my life. I now have 3 restaurants open and am preparing to open a 4th in Fort Worth in December and probably a 5th in Austin in 2014. That's the first time I'm saying that, so shh. I employ almost 200 people now in DFW. We've been fortunate enough to be on every local and many national best pizza lists. Within a year of being open, we were on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives on the Food Network. That single event drove a sustained 40 to 50% increase in sales and gave us the confidence in the cash flow to grow. Now, I no longer dread waking up on Mondays. Mondays have become my favorite day of the week. Coincidentally, it's also the weekend that the restaurant deposits from the weekend hit the bank account. It's always a good news. I don't miss my old life at all. No more business travel, no more business casual, no more LinkedIn. I take my kids to school every morning. I volunteer in their classes and I coach their sports teams. In fact, just last week, I had to actually go out and buy a pair of pants to attend a bat mitzvah. All I own were shorts. I shop at Kohl's, Target, and Cane Rosso. That's it. There are some days that I really can't believe that this is my life. Aside from the morbid obesity, it's perfect.
I got